Have you ever looked around and wondered why your life has become quieter while everyone else seems surrounded by people? At first, it feels like something must be wrong. Society teaches us that being alone is a sign of failure, that if you don't always have friends, invitations, or constant messages on your phone, you must be missing something. But psychology suggests a very different possibility. Sometimes, being alone is not a punishment. Sometimes it is evidence that you have stopped accepting relationships that drain your peace. As people grow emotionally, they often become more selective about who they allow into their lives. They no longer chase attention simply to avoid silence. Instead, they begin protecting their energy, their time, and their mental well-being. What looks like loneliness from the outside is often a conscious choice on the inside. The truth is that there is a powerful difference between being alone and feeling lonely. One is simply a physical state. The other is an emotional experience. You can feel lonely in a crowded room, and you can feel completely fulfilled while spending an evening by yourself. In this video, we'll explore the psychology behind solitude, why emotionally healthy people often value time alone, and how learning to enjoy your own company can become one of the greatest strengths you'll ever develop. Because sometimes the path that feels the loneliest is actually the one leading you toward the strongest version of yourself. Solitude is not the same as loneliness. One of the biggest misunderstandings about being alone is believing that it automatically means you're lonely. But psychology makes an important distinction between these two experiences. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being emotionally disconnected. It can happen even when you're surrounded by family, friends, or coworkers. You can spend an entire day talking to people and still feel as though no one truly understands you. Solitude is different. Solitude is the decision to spend time with yourself without feeling incomplete. It is a space where your mind can finally become quiet after constantly responding to the expectations, opinions, and demands of others. Many people avoid solitude because they mistake silence for emptiness. The moment they are alone, they immediately reach for their phones, social media, or endless distractions. Not because they enjoy them, but because silence forces them to face thoughts they have been avoiding. Emotionally mature people gradually learn something different. They discover that being alone is not the absence of connection, it is an opportunity to reconnect with themselves. When you no longer need constant noise to feel comfortable, your relationship with yourself begins to change. You stop fearing empty moments and start using them to reflect, recharge, and understand who you are without the influence of everyone else's expectations. That is why solitude is not the opposite of happiness. For many people, it is where genuine inner peace quietly begins. Why emotionally strong people enjoy being alone. One of the surprising characteristics of emotionally strong people is that they do not fear spending time alone. In fact, they often seek it out, not because they dislike others, but because they understand the value of stepping away from constant noise. Psychology suggests that people with a strong sense of self are less dependent on external validation. They don't need to be surrounded by people every moment to feel important. Their confidence comes from within, not from the number of messages they receive or the amount of attention they attract. That doesn't mean they reject relationships. It means they no longer confuse attention with connection. Instead of filling every quiet moment with conversations or distractions, they use solitude to recharge their minds. They read, learn new skills, reflect on their experiences, or simply enjoy the peace that comes from having no expectations placed upon them. This quiet time also strengthens emotional awareness. Without constant outside influence, they begin to recognize their own thoughts instead of absorbing everyone else's opinions. They become more intentional with their decisions because they are listening to themselves rather than trying to satisfy the crowd. Ironically, people who are comfortable being alone often build healthier relationships because they don't seek others out of desperation. They choose friendships and partners based on respect, trust, and shared values, not fear of loneliness. True emotional strength isn't shown by how many people surround you. Sometimes it is revealed by how peaceful you remain when no one else is around. Bad company is worse than no company. Many people stay in unhealthy relationships for one simple reason: they are afraid of being alone. They believe that any company is better than no company at all. But psychology suggests the opposite can often be true. The people you spend time with shape your emotions, your habits, and even the way you see yourself. If you are constantly surrounded by negativity, criticism, manipulation, or disrespect, those experiences slowly become your emotional environment. Over time, you may begin accepting behaviors that once felt unacceptable simply because you fear losing the relationship. This is why emotionally healthy people become selective about who they allow into their lives. They understand that peace is more valuable than forced companionship. Being alone for a season is often healthier than remaining connected to people who constantly drain your energy or make you question your worth. Solitude gives you room to heal, think clearly, and rebuild your confidence without someone else's negativity influencing every decision you make. This doesn't mean everyone around you is toxic. Healthy relationships bring support, encouragement, and emotional safety. But when a relationship repeatedly leaves you feeling exhausted, anxious, or emotionally smaller, it is worth asking whether that connection is truly serving your well-being. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is choosing an empty seat over the wrong company, because protecting your peace is never a sign of weakness. It is a sign that you finally understand your own value. What solitude does to your mind. One of the greatest psychological benefits of solitude is that it gives your mind something it rarely receives in today's world: space to think. Most people spend their lives reacting. They respond to notifications, conversations, opinions, and endless distractions from the moment they wake up. With so much outside noise, they rarely have the chance to hear their own thoughts. Psychologists have long observed that periods of quiet reflection help people process emotions, solve problems, and gain greater self-awareness. When you're alone without constant stimulation, your brain begins organizing experiences that were previously buried beneath daily stress. This is often why your best ideas appear during a quiet walk, while reading a book, or simply sitting in silence. Solitude also helps you separate your authentic desires from the expectations of others. Without the pressure to impress anyone, you begin asking important questions. What do I truly want? What kind of life feels meaningful to me? Which relationships genuinely bring me peace? These are questions that are difficult to answer when your attention is always focused on everyone else. That is why emotionally mature people don't fear moments of silence. They understand that growth often begins where distractions end. When you learn to enjoy your own company, your mind becomes clearer, your decisions become wiser, and your confidence becomes less dependent on other people's approval. Sometimes the quietest moments create the loudest personal breakthroughs. Why most people fear being alone. If spending time alone can be so healthy, why do so many people fear it? The answer lies in human psychology. From an early age, many of us are taught to measure our worth by how accepted we are. We learn to associate popularity with happiness, constant communication with love, and a busy social life with success. As a result, being alone begins to feel like rejection instead of reflection. But often the real fear isn't solitude, it's what solitude reveals. When the noise disappears, there are no conversations to distract you, no notifications demanding your attention, and no one else's opinions to hide behind. You are left alone with your own thoughts, unresolved emotions, and unanswered questions. For many people, that can feel uncomfortable. This is why some individuals constantly surround themselves with people, entertainment, or social media. They aren't always seeking connection, they are often escaping silence. Emotionally mature people eventually stop running from these quiet moments. They understand that facing themselves is part of personal growth. Instead of avoiding uncomfortable emotions, they become curious about them. They reflect, heal, and gradually build a stronger relationship with themselves. The irony is that the people who fear being alone the most often become dependent on relationships that don't truly fulfill them. But the people who learn to enjoy healthy solitude no longer stay where they are merely tolerated. They wait for relationships where they are genuinely valued, respected, and accepted for who they truly are. The hidden danger of isolating yourself too long. While solitude can strengthen your mind, psychology also reminds us that there is an important difference between choosing solitude and living in isolation. Healthy solitude is temporary and intentional. It gives you space to recover, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. Isolation, however, can slowly become a habit that convinces you the outside world is no longer worth engaging with. The longer someone remains completely disconnected, the easier it becomes to avoid people altogether. Conversations begin to feel uncomfortable. Meeting new people feels exhausting. Even simple social situations can start creating anxiety because the social skills that once felt natural become weaker through lack of use. Psychologists often describe this as a cycle. The more isolated you become, the harder it feels to reconnect. And the harder it feels to reconnect, the more tempting it becomes to stay isolated. That is why emotionally healthy people understand the importance of balance. They appreciate their quiet moments, but they also recognize the value of genuine human connection. They spend time alone without closing the door on meaningful relationships. They choose quality over quantity, seeking people who bring mutual respect, encouragement, and emotional safety. The goal is not to avoid the world. The goal is to stop depending on it for your happiness. When you enjoy your own company while remaining open to authentic relationships, solitude becomes a source of strength instead of a prison. That balance allows you to protect your peace without losing your connection to the people who truly deserve a place in your life. How solitude helps you find your purpose. One of the greatest gifts of solitude is something that many people never expect. It gives you the opportunity to discover your purpose of silence before it can produce its clearest ideas. That doesn't mean purpose appears overnight. It usually begins as a small feeling, a curiosity, an interest, or an idea that refuses to leave your mind. The more time you spend understanding yourself, the easier it becomes to recognize those moments and turn them into meaningful goals. Perhaps the most important realization is this: being alone does not mean your life is on hold. Sometimes it is during your quietest seasons that you build the skills, confidence, and clarity that will shape your future. The world often celebrates people who are constantly surrounded by others. But many of life's greatest transformations begin in moments when no one is watching. If you can be happy alone, no one can control you. At the end of the day, the greatest reward of learning to be alone is not independence. It is freedom. The moment you stop relying on other people to complete you, you become much harder to manipulate. You no longer stay in unhealthy relationships because you fear being abandoned. You no longer tolerate disrespect simply to avoid loneliness, and you no longer sacrifice your values just to gain someone else's approval. Psychology shows that people with a strong sense of self are more emotionally resilient. Their happiness is not entirely dependent on external validation because they have learned to build a healthy relationship with themselves first. This doesn't mean they never feel lonely or never need others. It simply means they know that real connection is built on respect, trust, and authenticity, not desperation. Remember, being alone is not the same as being forgotten. It is often a season of preparation, a time to heal old wounds, strengthen your character, discover your purpose, and become the kind of person who attracts healthier relationships in the future. So if your life feels quieter than it once did, don't assume you're falling behind. You may actually be growing in ways that cannot be seen from the outside, because the person who enjoys their own company carries a quiet confidence that no one can take away. And when you can be genuinely happy on your own, you stop chasing acceptance from the wrong people and start creating a life that reflects your own values, your own peace, and your own purpose.